Dream Session by Jeremy Hickerson. Lay out for the first verse this time, came over the headphones. Got it. Dennis picked a rapid-fire string of notes on the old Martin, did a 1-2 muffled strum, then got quiet. He sat, relaxed and attentive, like someone waiting for the bus to arrive when he's just seen it a few blocks away. Half a minute passed. His relaxed pose suddenly changed. He sat up straighter and leaned forward. The bus was here. Dennis barely seemed to move, but his left-hand fingers now held some frets, and his right hand picked an even frappa-frappa strum. He worked the strum for another 30 seconds, then played a broken arpeggio and held it. He kept playing the 3 or 4 note slow arpeggios, with a lot of space between them. Back to the strum again. An observer would deduce that this was the chorus. Now a key change, a full strum and out. Silence for 20 seconds. Had to be the bridge. Strumming again, this time louder, and the last section repeated. Then a dead stop finish. Dennis leaned back in his chair and let the guitar rest in his lap. They'd been at it for an hour on this one, a cover of a Ricky Skaggs tune. The arrangement was good, and the singer did it justice, even though his voice was a lot scratchier than it used to be. Eric Bold had never had a golden voice, although it was perfect for his material. It was the songs Eric wrote, the poetry in his lyrics, the simple, heartbreaking melodies over just a few chords that had made Dennis and a million other people buy every one of Eric's albums. And that was a lot of records. Eric had been at it for over 50 years now. Dennis had played thousands of sessions, but when he got the call for this one, his skin had tingled and his heart had sped up for a moment. He was nervous, his mouth dry, so that he noticed himself swallowing a lot as he drove into Nashville. When he pushed open the steel and glass door of Seven Bridges Sound, it felt like he was walking on stage at the high school dance, awkward and stiff in the rented tuxedo as he escorted the homecoming queen. He heard Bold's voice from the control room. "This is the good shit, some of the best I've smoked in a while," and had to fight hard to keep from turning around and running. He'd never met Eric, not up close, and that was the voice on all the records. That was the voice, right there in the next room. He glanced into the control room when he walked past. Bold was older than he had pictured. It had been a few years since he'd seen him. That had been on a session where Eric did some background vocals for one of his former bandmates. Now his face was deeply lined. All those years in the California sun had added up, and he had hardly any hair left on top. And Bold's actress wife, she was there too. Wow, time had sure worked her over. It gets us all, Dennis thought. The beautiful aren't exempt. He looked and looked, but it was hard to discern that sexy Ellie, the total babe he'd seen so many times on the movie screen. This was almost a bigger disappointment than seeing Eric looking like he'd come straight from the retirement home. They ran the Skaggs cover first, and Dennis settled down. Once he got into the ISO room and put on the headphones, he was just at work, like always, and the routine kicked in. The first time Eric's vocal came over the phones, everything was put right, and he forgot what Eric looked like. Dennis sat at ease for a few more minutes. They were listening to the playback in the control room. The phones came to life. "Okay, we've got a good take." That was Jim Seavey, the producer. Let's do the first run on digging treasure. Bold played a guitar intro and started singing. Dennis did an occasional strum, just taking in the song, getting to know it. There wasn't much to it, actually. Just a 1 chord and a 4 chord, then a 5 back to the 1 for the bridge. No chorus. The melody was maybe 4 notes and predictable. Something was wrong. Dennis kept his mind from going there at first until it became too obvious to ignore. Then he admitted it. The song sucked. Eric's songs were works of art, simple though they might be. Song after song, album after album. And now this one sounded like a junior high kid's first attempt. Dennis shook his head. This was harder to take than Ellie's wrinkles and sagging jawline. Now he wasn't nervous about being in the same room with Eric. Instead, he was nervous for Eric, embarrassed at having to witness Eric's demise. The dream session had turned into a nightmare. Maybe this was just a bad song. The next one would be better. But it wasn't. 2 more songs just as bad as the first. What was wrong with Eric? Couldn't he tell? To make matters even worse, Eric sang each song with conviction, as if the lifeless jumble of words and notes were one of his epic musical creations, as if the cliché lyrics and almost non-existent melodies were the delicately spun magic of his former mastery. Dennis couldn't take it. He had only walked out of 1 session in his life, but he needed to walk out of this one. If he didn't, all the massive inspiration Eric's songs had provided to Dennis' life, his love for music, and his development as a musician would forever be tainted. They called him into the control room after the playback of the 3rd song. "Anything you can do on guitar after the bridge?" Jim Seavey asked. "Something needs to happen." Something needs to happen, all right, Dennis thought, and it's these crap-ass songs. They need to go. He wasn't normally one of the quiet ones, the players who kept their heads down and collected their checks. This stuff mattered to him, even the most obviously commercial pandering songs. You could still make them musical. He was usually the first with a suggestion. But this was Eric Bold, and beyond that, there was no kind of clever musical trick that would save things here. The songs were that bad. Although maybe if the melody were different on this one. But he could never say that to Eric Bold. "Dennis," Seavey prodded, "it's not like you to be so quiet. Come on, give it to me." Dennis looked at Seavey and thought about it. Then he sang his idea for a new melody, but just the melody, no words. "Is that a guitar part after the bridge?" Seavey asked. "No, not a guitar part," Dennis said. He hesitated. Then, fuck it. He sang the melody again this time, with a few of Bold's words, and waited for the tornado to hit. "What's that?" Bold asked. "Just something that came to me while we were playing," Dennis answered. Bold gave him a hard stare. "You trying to tell me how to write songs?" "Nah, no, that's the last thing I'd do." "Then why'd you change my tune?" "It's just something I heard. It goes with the chords and makes things interesting." "And my melody isn't interesting?" No, that's not what I meant." Bold sang Dennis' tune in a lilting, mocking way. Then he stopped. He cocked his head as if he heard something. He sang Dennis' tune again, but with new lyrics. Good lyrics. Dennis couldn't help himself. The new tune with the new lyrics reminded him of Bold's classic work. So he said something crazy. "You should write that song." The words hung in the air for a long, awkward moment. "I'm sorry," Dennis said. "I'm done for the day." "Yes, I think that would be best," Seavey said quickly. Dennis went back for his guitar and got out of there. CB called him that evening and told him not to bother coming in for the next session. A few months later, when Dennis was driving the kids to school, he heard one of the songs on the radio. It was terrible. The only reason they were playing it was because it was Eric Bold. He turned it off midway through the first chorus. When he got home, he put on Bold's '70s album, Just Before, Always After. It sounded as good as it ever had. It's lucky I heard Eric sing the new lyrics to my tune, Dennis thought. That saved it for me. Otherwise, I would have only remembered those crappy songs. 6 months later, somebody, maybe one of his buddies, prank called Dennis. Dennis hung up on him twice until he sang Dennis' tune with the new lyrics. Then the guy said, "You're sure a tough fucker to get a hold of."